Welcome to Forensic Friday.
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Okay, so yesterday I come in to meet with my client online, right? We have an online session. And I had my Stanley and 2 coffee cups.
Oh, gosh.
One had tea, one had coffee. Full,
Okay.
both full. Because my voice was still pretty crappy yesterday.
Sure.
I come in, I spill my coffee cup. I'm cursing. There's coffee everywhere. I ruined my keyboard and my mouse. It splashes everywhere. So I'm cleaning all of that up and doing the best I can to get it cleaned up. While I'm cleaning it up, I knock over the teacup. So then I get tea everywhere. So I cleaned everything up. I had to buy a new keyboard because I couldn't do anything on my keyboard. It was not my laptop. It was my desktop. So just my keyboard. But I had to replace my keyboard and my mouse and clean the entire desk. And there is still coffee everywhere. And then I thought about in my office how there's coffee just running down the wall that I haven't cleaned up yet.
Oh, at Southeast?
Yeah. There's coffee just coming down the wall. Because I just haven't been able to sit there and get it all clean yet.
So funny.
I was a cluster yesterday, that's for sure.
We all have our days.
Oh my gosh.
I went for this hike with my friend Sarah. Here's how this went.
Oh no.
I've been wanting to do this hike. I wanted to do it last year, but my knee wasn't okay yet to do it, this type of hike. Because we haven't done 14ers yet. Also, Gary's going to kill me because I'm low-key eating. Anyway.
You're fine.
So I'm planning this hike. I was like, we're going to hike tomorrow, right? This was Friday. She was like, yeah, I was thinking we could hike or stand up paddleboard, do a morning one or whatever. And I was like, I want to hike. I need to get a hike in. She was like, okay, but I'm not going to do a 14er. Okay, fine. In my brain, I'm planning for us to do peak 1. I don't tell her that. I tell her, let's do Royal and see if we can make it to Mount Victoria. Because it goes to Mount Royal, Mount Victoria, and then peak 1.
Right.
That's a ridge. So I tell her, I'm like, okay, well, let's try to do Mount Victoria because it's past Royal, but it's not peak 1.
Right.
She's like, okay. So we get to Mount Victoria and I'm like, we can keep going. Because in my brain, I'm like, I'm already planning on doing peak 1 and I'm going to just see how far I can push you.
Right.
She literally said, have you seen Tinder Swindler?
No.
Oh my gosh. We need to do a whole episode on it.
I know. I was just thinking that as you said it because I have not.
She literally goes, you're the hiking swindler.
I could totally believe this.
You just tricked me into doing this massive hike that I thought was going to take us 5-ish hours. Took us 7.
Oh, no. Was she mad? I would have been like, absolutely not.
I don't know if she was mad. Today she was like, I'm so sore, but it was so fun. And I'm like, okay, but do you hate me? I don't know.
Do you hate me? Well, when Lisa got me lost hiking, we were walking in Nashville, Tennessee, but back from a mall by the Grand Ole Opry. And I end up, off-roading it with a Starbucks in my hand. And I got so mad. I threw the Starbucks in a bush. We almost got arrested. I was not pleased. And this is before I knew I had no airway. I was like, why am I so exhausted? And you couldn't get in anywhere. It was horrible. We still laugh about it. I was mad.
I mean, Sarah did say, she was like, you push really well. I'm not mean. We saw these other hikers where one girl was like, yeah, this is really hard. I thought about turning around. And her friend was like, you're not turning around. And I was like,
I would X marks the spot his ass. You're going right over the cliff.
There's 2 women.
Oh, absolutely. Right off the cliff.
And so I was like, Sarah, am I like that to you? And she was like, no.
Oh, no, you're very nice.
You say things like, we are so far at this point, it would be stupid to turn around, because at a certain point, that was just the truth.
Yeah.
And she was like, and that helped me. It was a whole thing. Here's one thing that we have going for us today.
Yeah.
We both have our pastel colored comfort sweatshirts on. So we borderline look like Skittles, or Preston.
Skittles.
Or Preston said we look like Easter.
We do look like Easter.
So
I'm rocking the canary. I think the color's canary today, yellow. I have a different color for every day of the week.
I think mine's bubble gum or something. I don't know. I don't remember what mine was called. Mine's the pink one. But at least we have that on to calm us down.
Well, and they're having a sale right now. So www.comfrt.com/forensic15 gets you 15% off, and they're having a sale.
Yeah. So go check out their stuff.
Get over there because you may need some comfort as we're talking about purity culture. Your face, you're like, I already know everything you're going to say. I yell about this at least once a week.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about purity culture for a minute. This did not take a ton of preparation. I'm a lit match at all times about this particular issue.
I know.
Have you ever seen me talk about this calmly?
Never.
Never.
No.
Because it fires me up every time.
Doesn't happen.
Basically, here's the deal with purity culture. I hate this so much that we have decided to have a new segment called the Midweek Meltdown.
I know.
So when we feel especially royally pissed off about something, we can just roll out an episode midweek so y'all can feel it with us. This is going to be a healing journey for all of us.
They're either going to feel it or think we're insane, but that's
It's okay. You don't have to listen. You know, if you want to protect your peace and not listen to this episode, I understand that.
Valid.
Take care of yourself. If you would like to heal alongside me and get really mad, then go for it.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm appreciative of that we're doing this episode is I didn't grow up in purity culture because I didn't grow up in a really Christian environment. I grew up Catholic, but it was like we were like creasters. We only went on like Christmas and Easter and then catechism.
Right.
So
holiday Catholic.
We were the holiday Catholics, but I do have my own thoughts on it. So we'll come back to that.
Absolutely. And my parents, this is my full disclaimer. All of the weirdness around this that I was exposed to was environmental outside of my home. So my parents never actually talked to me about purity culture one time. This is not something they actually care that much about.
Yeah.
But because I went to a Christian school for part of my education, that's where I got a lot of these messages.
Got you.
So my parents only now actually understand some of it. When I tell them, they're like, that's terrible. And I'm like, I know, but this happened to me in like 6th grade. We just never talked about it.
Oh my gosh. I have a client who literally was like, Natalie, you can quote me on your podcast.
Yes. What's the quote?
Some of the things that she has told me about growing up in purity culture and things she had to do. I was like,
oh,
come again.
Oh,
like a significant woman in her life having this big balloon with water in it or something and poking holes, small holes.
No.
As it dwindled. And she said, every time you give a boy a hug, every time you hold a boy's hand, and just kept poking. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot.
And you're just deflating. Oh, I have some doozies for you as well. One involves a dollar bill.
What about the rose?
Oh, we're going to talk about the rose. So one thing that happened is I went to a happy hour with a couple of my girlfriends.
Okay.
You heard the after effects of this in a meeting when we re-brought it up. Okay. But I'm having wine with my girlfriends. One of our friends was not exposed to purity culture, and the other one grew up in Texas in purity culture.
Oh, gosh.
And we started comparing notes, and it was horrifying. Like our other friend was just like, her eyes were dinner plates. She could not believe what was happening. And we're just talking about it like it's nothing.
Right.
It's the most insane thing ever. So I am going to be equal parts angry and vulnerable today.
Okay.
Because I'm going to share a few of my own stories because I think it's good for me to do that. And also I'm hoping it's helpful to some people who are listening.
Right.
Okay. So for those of you who did not grow up in evangelical culture in the 90s, let me just break it down for you what this actually is. In the 90s, technically some of it started in the 70s in reaction to kind of the free love, whatever of the 70s. Okay. But it really consolidated in the 90s into purity culture. And even further in the Southern Baptist movement, it was really this whole kind of movement of you will not have sex until you get married. That's essentially it. That's what purity is. Remaining pure means I will not have sex until I'm married. And it got more and more and more extreme until pretty soon people were coming out with dating books about not dating, courting, or literally just not dating. There was a book by Josh Harris. I
They
want to
called
say.
kiss dating goodbye.
I kissed dating goodbye. That man is no longer a Christian and has publicly apologized to everyone that he traumatized with his book.
Wow.
This was a pretty destructive thing. So for me, growing up in a wonderful family who was not cramming this down my throat by any stretch of the imagination,
Right.
when we moved to Colorado, I went to public school for a bit and then I switched into a Christian school in like fourth grade.
Mm-hmm.
That was really my first exposure to Christian schooling, but I'd been in the church my whole life.
Okay.
Okay, here's everyone in purity culture's first exposure for the most part. Fifth or sixth grade,
Mm-hmm.
something happens. It could be youth group. It could be a retreat. In my case, it was a sixth grade retreat with the school,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. It's just gross. It's gross. I'm already grossed out.
Was this when you lived in the Springs?
Yes.
Okay.
This one is in the spring. So
Makes sense a little bit.
yeah, I mean a little right. I mean, it makes sense. I'm thinking nothing of this. I'm just a la-di-da sixth grader, right? Nobody sees this coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's very stressful. So,
Right.
you're hanging out with your friends, whatever. They have a speaker. All of a sudden, they split up the boys and the girls, right? I'm thinking, oh, whatever. Okay, my sex education was like, here's a book you could read because I'm a reader.
Right.
Perfect. We never really even talked about it. I just read the book,
Uh-huh.
right? Okay, so I'm at this retreat. They split up the boys and the girls. Mind you, I have lots of guy friends. I've had guy friends my entire life. I'm super
Huh.
comfortable with guys. Not surprising I counsel a lot of men.
Yeah.
That's my comfort zone. So here I am with some of my girlfriends. Most of my best friends are in man camp, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Learning about how they're powerless over themselves, right?
Right.
And driven solely by their eyeballs and their sex drive, which most of them don't even have yet. And then the girls, right? We get the modesty, purity, whatever talk.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not sex ed. Okay. They're not talking about organs. They're not talking about periods. They're not talking about any of this stuff. Literally, what they're talking about is modesty and protecting your purity.
Oh my goodness.
And like you alluded to earlier, usually this involves some kind of a metaphor with a rose, or in my case, this is so screwed up, a dollar bill.
Okay, tell me about the dollar bill.
Girl, the lead, quote unquote, leader, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They broke us into like smaller groups. I want to say there were 7 or 8 girls in this little group.
Okay.
Okay. Leader pulls out a crisp dollar bill, which is gross on so many levels now as an adult. I just can't even
Uh-huh.
handle it.
Uh-huh.
And what they say is, this is a dollar. This is worth a dollar. Then they encourage everyone in the group, when you get the dollar, to do something to it. Crumple it up, step on it, put a little rip in it, whatever, and you pass it around the circle.
Ripping it?
Ripping it.
Oh my God, I can't.
I know, it's really bad. So then when it gets back to the leader, they go, it's still worth a dollar. But which dollar would you rather have?
I can't. That's so ridiculous.
Yes. So that's typically in evangelical culture, purity culture introduction is something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Since you didn't grow up with this, what are your initial, give it to me?
Well, I mean, I've already been hearing a lot of things from people who have grown up in purity culture and how damaging it was. So I'm not sitting here like super surprised,
No.
but also like a dollar bill. And then she said it's still worth a dollar at
Still
the
worth a
end.
dollar.
Here's what I want to say.
Can't wait.
Who gives a rat's ass? It's still worth a dollar. Like, that's my thought. I'm like, cool, thank you.
Maybe some dollars have more fun than other dollars.
Whatever.
I don't know. I mean, but it is the most screwed up thing. And the fact that not a
So
single
screwed up. That would not, though, if I were there, I don't think that would have had an impact on me, because my logical brain would have been like, you just made a dollar bill look like other dollar bills that we like always have. Like
But
that.
remember, okay, you're 11 or 12.
Right. I hear that.
Okay, so my son is 8.
Yes.
First of all, I just cannot even fathom having a conversation with him about sex. That just feels very stressful. But when I think about his precious little brain and how bad he just
Mhm.
wants to be good,
Yeah,
He
that's
just
fair.
wants to be good, right?
Mhm.
Man, this purity culture thing, they are going to lock this down fast. So they're going to
Oh
talk
yeah.
to these little sixth graders and they're going to be
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh yeah. No, I
and
hear
whose
that.
job is it?
Well, but my
Girls.
thing, right. I think when I think of the dollar bill or the rose, like when I heard
Yeah.
about the rose, how there was, I don't know who it was,
Uh-huh.
but the story that I heard was there was a rose that was passed around like a youth group, a whole
Yep.
youth.
Yep.
And obviously the rose looks wilty. There's been a bunch of greasy hands that have touched it. There's like petals falling off. And they're like, this is your purity. Like, that's insane. So it's
Oh
the same
yeah.
thing with the dollar, right? Like,
Mhm.
same concept, same metaphor. And it's just all of it's damaging.
It's unbelievably damaging. And we're going to get to all the ways that this is damaging
Mhm.
and has really made an impact on an entire generation of women because not only did this affect evangelical culture, but there actually was a lot of donation and fundraising happening on a governmental level
Mhm.
in abstinence only education, and that included Democrat and Republican
Mhm.
candidates and parties donating to these causes. So
Mhm.
that abstinence only movement was not just an evangelical movement. The evangelicals put it over the top because that's what we do, right? But it was
Right.
actually something that was pretty embraced in the 90s. You had the AIDS scare going on, you had all this
Yeah.
stuff. So there was kind of this vibe like
Yeah.
if you get an STD, if you get AIDS, if you get whatever, it's because, you weren't doing what God's best was for you.
Right.
And then you have these books come out and all this stuff, right?
Yep.
So that's typically like your little sixth grade drive-by. The drive-by is protect your purity. This is really important. We'll tell you more later. And
Mhm.
don't talk about it too much, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And really don't talk to the boys, right? We separate the boys and the girls quick
Right.
in
Right.
these conversations because God forbid we have boys and girls talking to each other about any of this stuff, right?
Mhm.
So then in eighth grade, same thing.
Mhm.
We divvy them up, boys over here, girls over here. This one got a little more technical. Maybe there was a chart or two, maybe a graph. I don't know. It was a little more technical. It was a little bit of an out of body experience for me. And we reiterate again, right? We reiterate yet again, you got to be on the right side of this thing. Now,
Mhm.
the boys get a little bit of, hey, don't look at porn.
Mhm.
The girls get a whole lot of, don't be the porn, right? And I'm sitting here and I'm getting boobs. Things are happening. I got no control over some of these things, right? And I have all these guy friends, and I am from that moment on really being taught something pretty serious
Mhm.
about my body. And the people introducing sexualizing all of these friendships and relationships are the people bringing us purity culture. They're the
Right.
ones who made it weird. It took me until I was 40 years old to fully understand all of this, but they made it weird, not us. We didn't make it weird. They made it weird.
Right.
Okay, jump to senior year. I will never forget this. Senior retreat. Okay,
Mhm.
we're all watching a movie one night. This is after they've indoctrinated us with whatever they chose to indoctrinate us with. I'm so not getting invited to another reunion ever. It's fine. I was laying on the ground. Everybody was laying on the ground watching a movie.
Okay.
No weirdness happening. I'm next to literally my brother. This is
Okay.
somebody I love like a brother,
Right.
total friends, nothing on it, whatever. And I keep moving around because it's uncomfortable. It's like a hard ground. I don't know the obsession Christian kids have with every kind of lock in, whatever known to man. It's always like an overnight something, but God
Yeah.
forbid you are inappropriate in any way, right?
Right.
So I'm just like shifting around, and this teacher comes over and is like,
Oh
"You need to
no.
stop doing that." And
Doing what?
I was like, what? I literally, it doesn't even register like what she is talking about.
Oh my gosh.
And my friend was just sitting next to me. We weren't even touching. We're not even touching each other. I was just laying on my side watching this thing.
Right.
She goes, "We've been watching you and you need to stop what you're doing." I was like, okay. So I sit up and I literally just sat there for hours, like straight up,
Mm.
like just feeling like I don't even know what I'm doing. I
Mhm.
didn't even know what I'm doing wrong. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'll get to rebellion in a minute, but most of the people in the class by that point, like I had a boyfriend, people had boyfriends, it was a whole thing. I actually had a
Yeah.
boyfriend in college at that point.
Right.
All of this is happening all around and nobody's having real conversations, but the shamey stuff is huge. I was a good
Hmm.
kid, never in trouble for anything.
Hmm.
I remember just being like, I don't even know what I did. I don't know
Hmm.
what they're so freaked out about.
Hmm.
I still don't actually know. I don't know if they thought I was gonna accidentally like touch him somehow. I don't know what the fear was.
Maybe they thought you already were. I don't know.
I don't know. It's very weird. And these are the same guys who are in my hot tub every weekend,
Right.
right? So
But
like
there's like no worry. Like, why would
it's
you?
just very weird. It's all very weird. And
Yes.
again, my parents are not on this train. I don't even think they know all of this happened, to be honest.
Mhm. Well,
Okay.
that makes sense to me though, because there's already shame around it. You felt like you did something wrong. So, of course, why would you tell your parents about it?
Oh, and I'll never forget like the look on her face. It was like I
Right.
was the literal devil. And we're going to get to in a minute what this does to boys and girls. But
Hmm.
like nobody's talking to him. Was he sitting too close to me? Right? No, it's all me. Whatever I'm doing is causing some kind of problem that I don't even understand.
Right.
Right? Okay. Cut to grad school.
Oh, gosh.
Grad school. Get ready. Hold on to your butt. I don't know. Have I told you this story? I don't know if I've told you this story.
I don't know, but this is where you and I differ. Like, so when I think of our stories, we have like such a similar trajectory in terms of like we both at some point lived in the Springs,
Oh
both went
yeah.
to CU Boulder,
Oh
both went to
yeah.
them. But this is, yeah. So I'm just so curious about what you're about to say because this is where you and I have differences in our line of where we're at.
Well, I think that there's a timeline difference. So I think that you had a little more rebellion, worldly stuff going on in high school, and then got into more ministry type stuff more
Basically, middle
college.
school. Yeah, middle school and high school, girl. I mean, Summit County
100%.
kids, we don't play. Like,
No,
we
for sure.
full send in whatever we're doing.
100%. And then by the time you got to Boulder, you were kind of a little bit more interested in like ministry and whatever.
Yeah.
I was a little more buttoned up and then hit CU Boulder and lived in a sorority and did all the things
Yeah.
and then never really turned back, to be frank, in terms of just being, I just have very strong opinions now. I don't take
Yeah.
crap from anybody.
Yeah.
So in grad school, this is when I was very rebellious in grad school. I actually feel bad now because I actually missed out on some really cool experiences because I was just like,
Mhm.
yeah, screw that. I don't want to go,
Mhm.
And I look back on it and like, what an amazing experience that I paid 50 grand for
I
that I
know.
maybe could have been more present for, but what that's fine.
Yeah.
So they have this thing in grad school called spiritual formation, which we're going to get to another day, what that
Hmm.
looks like and how that can be used and abused.
Hmm.
So we have to come up with like a plan for how we're going to develop spiritually,
Did
right?
I do this? I did. I think
You
mine
did.
was called professional development.
No, no, no. It's spiritual formation. You probably have not a body experience like I did. You're in a small
Probably.
group.
Well, to be honest, Janine, I think for even when I started my ministry stuff, like when I got into ministry and kind of found my own faith and all that, I never felt like I fit in because of the purity culture. And it's not because I wasn't like, quote unquote, like I wasn't like messing around with dudes all the time. That was like not my jam,
No, no, no.
regardless. But it wasn't because of the purity culture. It was just because I was like, one, individuals I grew up with in Summit never caught my eye. And two, I ended up dating a Christian guy in high school. But it was still never a purity culture type of thing. It just was like, that just wasn't my jam. Anyway, that's beside the point. I never felt like I fit in because I never understood
Yeah.
that dynamic.
You just
I
had
just
no exposure to it.
I just well, I think I indirectly did, but I just always felt so separate from a lot of girls in ministry
Mm,
because of it. And again, it wasn't because I was messing around with people, but it was more because I was like, I grew up in a home and community where it was like kind of like live and let live and stop judging people for what they
yeah.
do.
Imagine that.
But so when I joined the ministry world, it was like there was so much judgment.
Oh yeah.
So I was always on the out because I didn't understand why they were judging people. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Okay.
Well, and here's the thing that Christian girls don't talk about is we had our own private rebellion. So like if
Right.
we're shopping at the mall with the boys, guarantee you the girls are going to Victoria's Secret.
Oh, interesting.
Uh-huh.
See, that's like that just what? I
Well,
mean,
because if you tell me
uh-huh,
that there's a roadmap
uh-huh,
that I should not be following,
uh-huh.
I'm probably going to mess with the roadmap a little bit eventually.
I mean,
If you make everything about sex, eventually everything is about sex.
absolutely, which we kind of talked about in the mega church madness stuff.
Yes. Well, look at Carl Lentz. He was
Right.
attracted to everything. He wanted everything. He
Yeah.
hooked up with this other person. He was
Yeah.
actually really struggling
Yeah.
internally. What
Yeah.
that turned into is yelling at everyone else about not having sex,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Well,
is
and that's like
weird.
that's the thing though, is that I'm getting at is like for me, that wasn't rebellion. Like where I grew up, it was like girls shopped at well, they shopped at Victoria's Secret when we were able to go to Denver to get underwear.
Oh, yeah.
In Summit, at that time, we barely even had a Target. So we would go to Walmart to buy all of our undergarments. So like that's just funny. Like
Oh,
growing
no.
up,
The Christian
that's
school girls, all the thongs, all
so
the
wild.
craziness, all the, oh my gosh, yes. And we just carry our little Victoria's Secret bags around. We knew exactly what we were doing.
Oh yeah, see that for us it was like, oh, you bought your you got the fancy underwear because you went to Victoria's
Exactly.
Secret. That was
Because
how we were.
if the adults make it a thing, it will be a thing. This is where they just totally
Right.
miscalculated this whole thing.
Right. What I'm saying though is for us, it wasn't a thing. It was
No,
just
I
like,
know.
lucky you did that.
Okay, so at the same time, my very best friend, I would go to their house and like have a beer with them when we were eating fajitas, or they'd come to my house and we'd have a Bailey's in the hot tub, and neither one of us ever drank because it wasn't a thing.
Right.
That wasn't a thing. Nobody made that a thing, so that wasn't a thing.
Yep. Opposite for us.
Opposite, right?
Yep.
Oh, so interesting. Okay. So grad school, this is where I started being able to like use my words because I had gone to Boulder
Right.
and had to use all my words. When you're in the basement of a frat house, you learn to use your words,
Right.
right? Okay. So grad school, I'm doing my profession or my spiritual formation, whatever plan.
Yeah.
My mentor was my best friend because I'm lazy AF and I have a great mom and I just don't want to deal with
Oh,
any of
this
it.
was when we had to have the mentors.
Remember the mentors? You had to meet with the mentors. My
Yes.
mom's best
I had a
friend.
really great mentor. She was wonderful.
Sorry, not sorry. I have mentors. You met them at my 40th birthday. I have wonderful mentors.
Yeah.
None of them had time to come meet with me at grad school. So it was my best friend. We go have coffee, call it a day.
Yeah.
So I go in for a meeting with the head of the department.
Okay.
It's like the counseling point person. They're no longer there. And all of my plan was self-care because I don't want to do anything else. I
Right.
wasn't super invested in this whole process, right?
Right.
So one of them was, you know how I love a bubble bath. I
Yes.
love a bubble bath. It's one of my favorite things,
Yes.
right? Okay. I will work. I have a table thing that goes over my tub and I will work in the tub sometimes.
Yeah. I
I love
believe
it so much. You know I'm obsessed.
yes.
Okay. So one of my action steps is to take bubble baths because why not, right?
Right.
He asks me, I kid you not, he looks at me dead ass, right? Eye to eye, right?
Oh no.
He goes, well, have you thought about how you're going to explore yourself sexually during your bubble baths?
I feel like that is
Uh-huh.
I feel like that's borderline harassment.
Well, no, it is.
Okay.
It's sexual harassment. Okay, so I'm
Yes.
sitting there and I I don't even know what happened. My face got hot, but I wasn't embarrassed. I was just pissed. And I was getting married. So I was getting married that summer. So I think what he was trying to tell me was, hey, you're going to be having sex because he's assuming purity culture, all the things, right? He's making lots of
Yes.
assumptions.
Yes.
And he puts it to me this way. So I look at him, Natalie, I shit you not. I look at him and I go, are you talking about masturbation? He turns beet red. He
I believe
wanted
it.
to die. I thought if he could have disappeared in that moment, I think
You
he
would
would
have.
have. He was not there much longer after that.
Well, that's right, because you're not the only girl he's said something wildly inappropriate to.
Oh no, I know. I know it's not because I've talked to people and I'm like, do you remember so and so? Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
I wish now that I had just really done something with that. But I got married like a month later and I just didn't have the energy to like deal with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home from school and I was like, Carrot, guess what happened? And he was like, oh my God, he's just like
He's like,
laughing.
that's not funny,
He's
actually.
like, wow, Janine, that's wildly inappropriate. I was like, I know. But I just kept it moving because I was busy. I had things to do. I look back on that and I'm like, what about the women who couldn't? What about the women who wouldn't have said something? What if he'd said something worse to
Mm-hmm.
some of these other people? Because he never met with me again. He no-showed our next two appointments.
Of course he did.
I don't blame him. I would have no-showed on me too
He's,
because I was ready.
he was terrified of
I was
you.
like, step up to the plate. You know what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, he didn't want to meet with me again. That's fine. I didn't want to meet with him either.
Yep.
So I should say there are some cultural differences in
Mhm.
how this rolls out. So I tell you my experiences to say
Yep.
I got to take a break in college from this whole wild thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it was extraordinarily helpful for
Mm-hmm.
me because I got to hear people with different things. I didn't lose who I was. I am who
Right.
I am. But
Yeah.
the structure that people had set up around me, this kind of faux
Yeah.
structure went away, which was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then by the time I hit grad school, I really knew who I was. I
Mm-hmm.
knew who I was. I was marrying an incredible man and I was good. I was just kind of fine. And he did not grow up in purity culture. So he was
Mm-hmm.
mystified, kind of like you. When I explained these things to him, he was like,
What?
okay. Like he doesn't know what to do with me.
Like, huh?
Well, that's
Literally,
weird.
sometimes when my client will tell me things, I look at her and she's like, yeah,
Oh,
that's real.
no, I know.
And I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh. And what I got was so tame. So if you were in the South, okay, like one of our precious friends who grew up in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
so much more intense, so much more
Mm-hmm.
intense. And the parents are sometimes in on it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So in the South, they had
Oh,
purity
yeah.
balls
Yeah.
where the daughter, like my dad would never have been down with this. Like my dad was literally hands off in this entire process.
Yeah.
There was no, I'm cleaning my shotgun on the front porch. My dad met my husband and thought he was the greatest thing. They're still best friends.
Love that.
There was none of this weird whatever. And I know we've joked about having our dads come on and do one with us about how to
Yeah.
raise an empowered woman because
Yeah.
when I look at my dad and I'm like, how were you so cool with me getting married so young?
Right.
Like I was ass backwards in love at 20, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He goes, well, you know what, Janine? It was good to know him, but I know you.
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I trust you and you know who you are. And that's more
Mm-hmm.
important than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
You make good choices. So if this is your person, I'm thinking you probably made a good choice.
Yep.
I'm like, you are a feminist, sir, and you don't
Yeah.
know it. You're a bona fide feminist, right?
Yes. Well, like encouraging empowerment and having your own voice.
Yes. So in the South, these purity balls are wild. People had purity rings, which I always thought that was really weird. And they'd wear it on their
Right.
wedding hand,
Yep.
like the wedding finger.
Yep.
Wedding finger? Ring finger on your wedding hand, left hand.
Yeah. Your ring finger, but like where your wedding ring goes.
Exactly. So you'd wear this
Yeah.
purity ring until your father gives you to your husband. It's wild. But they would have purity balls where these girls would dress up, and some of them were very young. Like some of them did this yearly.
Mm-hmm.
And the dad would like promise to protect the daughter's purity and all this weird stuff. They are sexualizing everything. The
Mm-hmm.
relationship between a father with his daughter, and
Yeah.
then this whole concept of kind of handing your daughter over to this man, like all of it's weird. It's
Yeah.
patriarchal, very intense, probably not the best for people. It's just not.
Well, and I think,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, I think, again, so foreign to me. However, there's like part of me that's like, I think they're missing the goal. So I
Yeah.
think one of the things, because I have actually some like old friends who I wouldn't say do this, but do like they're like girl dads and they're very protective of their girls, which I actually think is really sweet, but it's not protective in of like, I'm going to protect your purity, but I'm going to treat you the way that I want men in your life to treat you.
Oh, yeah. Be good
So
to
it's
your
like,
daughters.
exactly. So
But
it's
the
like,
notion that your daughter cannot protect herself is wild.
right. Well, but also like, how do you teach her to do that?
Yeah. You've
That's what we're missing. It's like,
exactly.
I'm going to just protect you. And until you have a man in your life, I will protect you until they can protect you. Instead of saying, I'm going to be protective as a parent, that makes sense.
Yes.
I mean, as a mom, I'm going to be like wildly protective of either one of them. If I have a boy or a girl,
Oh,
I'm going to be
yeah.
protective. But part of that protection is I'm going to teach you how to protect yourself,
How to think for
how
yourself,
to think
how
for
to
yourself.
speak for yourself,
Yes. And how to say no, how to have boundaries, all of that.
all of
And
it.
that's part of that. Like, it's like my brain just went to this place of like, I think some people have the goal of that, but because they're 90s, 80s and 90s kids, they've been raised in this mindset of, well, that's what this looks like. Instead of saying, hey, I just want you to be able to speak for you. And I'm going to teach you about
Yes,
what that looks like. And I'm going to protect you as your parent, but I'm going to teach you what it means to have boundaries, protect
absolutely.
yourself, all of that. Anyway, sorry, I had to go on a tangent.
No, you're 100% right. And so if we talk about the impact to boys and girls, this is what really makes me mad. The impact to girls is what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Girls feel responsible for a boy's sexuality and their purity,
Mm-hmm.
overly responsible for how they're perceived in terms of what they wear, what their body looks like. It makes them self-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Girls become quieter and
Mm-hmm.
more amenable to whatever's going on around them. They don't get fiercer, they get more quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I think one of the things that happens to girls is it creates a layer of secrecy around things that have happened to them. Because if you read these books, there's one tiny chapter at the end for people who've been sexually abused, people who've, made mistakes. There's the concept of a born again virgin, which is a really screwed up thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like this tiny bit at the end, and nobody wants to be that last chapter in the book. That's not a redemptive thing. It's like, ooh,
Well,
boy, you
again,
screwed that up.
it goes back to the shame piece, right? That just feeds into the shame that we're talking about. That's like at the root of purity culture.
Yes.
And that's the hard part, right? Like,
Yes.
and I'm sure we're gonna get to this, but again, my thoughts go to like, it's okay to have morals that speak to
Yes.
and boundaries that speak to staying quote unquote a virgin or staying, abstinent until marriage or whatever. It's okay to have those morals, but it's getting to what's the point of that? If the point is shame, we need to figure something else out,
Well,
right?
and
We
if
need to
even
talk
if the
through what that
point
means.
is preserving yourself for someone else,
Mm.
that's weird.
Mhm.
Okay. And that is literally what it is. It's like there's a lot of
Mhm.
gift verbiage, like your husband will unwrap it kind of narrative. Yeah,
Ugh.
I know, girl. I'm telling you, it just gets wild.
Unwrap it?
Yes, this is
That's not actually a thing. Is that really a
oh,
thing?
it's a thing.
Oh, I can't.
It's a thing. So here's the thing then. What really makes me sad is what it does to our boys, too,
Mm.
because it reduces boys to like these crazed sex maniacs. And I think about my precious guy friends my whole life, like best guys ever. I dated the best guy in high school. I dated great people who treated me with so much respect and compassion. And we didn't even talk about all this crap because they were
Mhm.
just good humans and I'm a good
Mhm.
human and
Mhm.
we cared about each other.
Mhm.
This whole thing is set up to really belittle men also.
Mhm.
And yet again, women have to manage everything, which is one of the problems that we have anyway in relationships and marriages, right? So it reduces these precious boys and it teaches these girls that this is all boys care about.
Yeah.
And that's just not true.
Well, it teaches girls that, but it teaches boys that.
Oh, and it
This is
sets boys
all,
up for how they should be.
yes, this is what you're looking for. Like the amount of dads I've talked to where they're like, well, I was a teenage boy once. And I'm like, so teach them differently.
Teach them something different. And that's not all teenage boys.
Like you can say, hey, yeah,
Yep.
like all human beings have, once they hit a certain age, they all have these raging hormones, and we've
Oh,
got to be
yes.
mindful, and we've got to talk about it, all the things, right? But that doesn't mean that that's what your driving force is. Because here's the
Oh,
thing. Women also, teenage girls also have a crazy sex drive,
oh
but
my gosh, yes.
but we're taught not to talk about it and to
Exactly.
not think that way. So if we hold humans, all humans, to the same standard, it actually might look a little different. And boys might feel, and men might feel a little bit more empowered to not have to go there with their brain.
Absolutely.
One of our, and I don't know if you remember this, and I won't say who it is just because I don't have their permission to share anything, but you and I have a friend who literally said one time, you know, just something along the lines of like, God forbid, I can't think for myself. I just think, I just let my eyes take control.
Oh, yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were joking, obviously.
Of course.
But I just thought it was funny because it's like, that's the stereotype.
That's the stereotype for
And
sure.
that sucks because it's shortening. I think it's very, what's the opposite of empowerment?
Disempowerment,
Sure.
belittling,
It's
reducing.
very, it's very belittling to men, I think, because
Yes.
there's so much more to them than just thinking with how, whatever.
Well, and the
Get
covert
PG.
message is everything is sex. So for how much this culture wanted kids to not think about sex,
Mm-hmm.
it made everything about sex.
Right.
The thing that's so weird about this, and this is the worst. I always tell couples who come in for premarital counseling this. If a couple comes in, Christian couple comes in for premarital counseling, and they're like, we're going to have our first kiss on our wedding day, and we're blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, cool, 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 cool. And inside I'm dying because I'm like, this is going to be so bad. Like, please
Have you
keep
seen
my
that
card. Call
show?
me after the honeymoon.
Do you remember that show? I can't remember what it's called, but there was a show in the 2000s, early 2000s, that was like basically people saving their first kiss till their wedding day. And
Yes,
it like two fish. Oh, it was so bad.
I
Even
know exactly what
Christian
you're talking about.
communities, even the Christian community I was in, because I got into like, more into like some Young Life stuff and whatever
Too
in high school.
much, too much.
But they were like, that's a lot.
It's too much.
That's a
It's
lot.
just, and you know what? If that's you, good for you. Maybe you had a good honeymoon. I have yet to meet one person who that was their thing and
Yeah.
everything was okay on their honeymoon because it's
Well,
so much pressure.
yeah.
Think
And
about the
that's
Duggars. Think about the Duggars. Okay.
right.
What's his bucket? Child porn dude? Josh Duggar, the
Oh,
oldest one who
yeah.
abused his sisters. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I saw this article the other day and it showed a picture of his wife like on their wedding day because they were like chaste, whatever, had their
Mhm.
first kiss on their wedding day. And then all of a sudden it was like game on. Like everybody's joking about the honeymoon and the wedding night and all. It's like so much pressure. The pictures of her, they did more pictures like the next day. Like she put her wedding dress back on and they took more pictures. Oh, oh, Nat, she looks dead inside. Like
Mhm.
the difference is huge.
Mhm.
And I think it's bananas that people think that women can go from thinking this thing is sinful,
Mhm.
terrible, hurting their partner, causing
Mhm.
them to stumble or sin or whatever, I don't know, whatever label they put on it. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden, because you get married, you're supposed to then all of a sudden flip the switch and be some kind of sexual maven and know
Mhm.
everything and be able to do everything. And the expectations are insane. And
Mhm.
those people do
Mhm.
not come back okay from their honeymoons. I've counseled them. It's not great.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and part of that too, I think it's a lot of women, but I think it's couples in general, men and women. I do. Like we're focusing a lot on women, which is great because I think women had um different pressures, and we, like you said, we were in charge of all this stuff, like don't wear leggings as pants. The
Oh,
second leggings became a thing, I wore them. You know me, I'll wear leggings.
yeah.
That's just the thing. Anyway, But it's like
I'm lucky because I have short arms. So if they have the fingertip rule, you know me and my little T-Rex arms, I could
oh
wear
yeah.
a short skirt.
Right. Well, right. Well, and part of it is like obviously there's, I want to be what I feel is comfortable and appropriate, right? Like
Of course.
obviously if I wear leggings, I'm going to wear something a little longer because that's cute or oversized sweater, whatever.
Right.
But I think to what you were saying about this idea, I actually, back when I worked in Pullman in 2012, I had a conversation with a couple and that they, very sweet couple waited till they're married, and shared with me after that how horrible, not just like intimacy was, but just the expectation of it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it
Yes.
was actually really fascinating because the wife told me, she goes, both of them went into this with like, I have, all these expectations of I have to be good, I have to be good enough, I have to be this, I have to be that, both of them. And then they actually thankfully talked about how nervous they were and just they were like, we literally did what a lot of people do dating when we got married. We just took it slow. I was
Which
like,
I
good for
love.
you.
And that's actually true, I think, for a lot of couples. That's a healthy expectation. So, like, Nat, if we had a couple now that came in and they have this shared belief, which again, we've said in and of itself, the
It's not
idea
bad.
of making this decision together as a couple is great.
Mhm.
There's no issue with that as long as it's not shame-based and it's not
Oh,
only her job to make sure this doesn't happen, because that I take issue with that, right?
right, right.
But if this is like a decision that two people make, good for them. Also, if I was their counselor, I would say, go at your own pace. Don't put a bunch of
Yes.
expectations on things. Just be together.
Yes.
Just be together and figure it out like everybody
Because
does,
I mean, now
right?
you have the rest of your life to figure it out.
Exactly. And that can be beautiful. But I
Yeah.
think this idea, and I think this is less a thing now, but it was a big thing in the 90s and the 2000s.
Yeah.
It's like this thing that we don't talk about, can't do, can't whatever. And then all of a sudden, I remember going to a bridal shower when I was like in eighth or ninth grade. And this was like this perfect Christian woman, like in her 20s. And I'm at this
Hmm.
bridal shower and they start pulling out the lingerie. And I just remember being like, what? Like it just like broke my brain a little bit. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the thing? Like now it's okay? Like what? Like,
Right.
and then as I got older, I realized like just this switch, like there's like this switch
Yeah. Yeah.
that would get flipped. And fortunately, because like I said, my family, this was not a thing for my family. This was not a thing my parents reiterated. This was just not a thing. And my parents
Right.
got together really young,
Right.
whatever. My relationship with my husband was really kind of immune from this craziness. He didn't grow up
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
I had broken away from it quite a bit. And so I was able to just be kind of comfortable with me. And I'm so thankful for that. But I'm really passionate about the people who didn't have that reprieve, but especially the people who have been abused in this way.
Yes. And just totally shamed, like
Yes.
pressured to be a certain way based out of shame.
Or married the wrong person because they were 17 years old and they just happened to have sex with this person, or
Mm.
their youth pastor seduced him and they had to keep it a secret because it was their fault because they dressed a certain way, or they
Which is
wore a
just
two-piece
horrible.
in the
That's
hot tub or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
these are the stories we've heard.
Yeah.
And so the reason I get so fired up about this one is number one, it doesn't work. Abstinence-based education does not work.
Mm-mm.
If you raise your children with strong core values and that they can come to their own opinions about things and stand by those things, and if they have a relationship with God, trust their own relationship with God and not what some
Right.
book tells them to do, like some
Right.
dating self-help book written by somebody who knows literally nothing.
And then ends up not believing God later and apologizes for everything they said.
100%. Like maybe if we just really empower our kids to have some critical thinking and to
Yeah.
have good self-preservation.
And actually, here's the other piece to that. No one has the dang conversation. Okay. Like,
Nobody talks. No.
and I don't know if we're going to keep this part in or not, but like, let's just be real.
Yeah.
Sex does change things.
Oh,
It changes
absolutely.
dynamics, it changes relationships.
Hmm.
something that my church does really well is they talk about it in that form of like, hey, it just changes things. It
Mhm.
connects you in a way that is really strong.
Yeah.
And it's, like that's just what it is, right? So going off what you said, if you're teaching your kids or if you're working with your kids, what are core values? What are morals? What are the morals that you think are right for you? Whatever. And then teach them, right? And I've said this about, and I'm not saying sex is the same as drugs and alcohol. I'm not saying that. However, like teach them the thing. Say, hey, this is what this means, right?
Oh,
If
yeah.
you were to do this in high school or got, or younger, you were like things change emotionally, physically, that they just change, right?
Your relationships change, everything
And I
changes.
want you to have a conversation with me about it before you do it if you feel comfortable. Whatever. Same thing with drugs and alcohol. Hey, like you're going into this world with
Oh, yeah.
people who want to do these things, who engage in these things in appropriate ways and then not appropriate ways. And like just talk about the freaking thing.
Talk about the
Does
thing.
that make sense?
Yes, and with anatomically correct language. So one of the things that
Yes.
happens with purity culture, we it's your flower of being dramatic,
No,
but still,
I can't.
I can't. Okay, we have people have penises or vaginas.
Oh God.
Okay, vagina. We need to be able to actually like say the thing.
Oh,
Number
yes.
one, this is one of the number one ways to keep kids safe is
Yeah.
if they know how to talk about their body in a
Yeah.
healthy way with the correct terms.
Right.
And so I've done research on how to keep kids safe. There's some really good books out there. Maybe we'll
Mm,
slap them on the website.
I
Predators
think
is a
we
great
do.
book. There's a few like that that really say, here's how you safeguard your kids
Mhm,
from sexual
mhm.
abuse. Churches are one of the number one places that offenders go to
Which is
find
so
victims
sad.
because we're naive. We don't
Yeah.
use the right language about things,
Mhm.
and we're gullible.
Yeah.
It's a gullible population. And so that's where predators go.
Yeah.
And so we have to empower our kids. And if our kids are looking somebody in the eye and our kids are not afraid to say vagina, they're not as likely to get abused. That's just the way it is.
You're not wrong.
No, it's the truth. I'm telling you.
You're
Some of
like,
my
there's
best,
research based on this.
I have a dear friend of mine who has two girls. And oh my gosh, these kids are so hysterical. They know all the words, man, and they'll tell you exactly what's happening.
You know what? Good
If
for
something
them.
doesn't feel right, if they need something, if they will tell you straight up. And it
Mhm.
takes a second to get used to. But I'll tell you what, they're not going to be at the top of anybody's list to be a victim because
Thank God.
they know their bodies and they talk to their
Yes.
parents.
Yes.
You know, my son's doctor always will ask it's actually a she, pediatrician, before she looks at anything,
Mhm.
she asks him, do I have permission? And then also asks mom and dad.
Mm.
That's been true since before he could talk.
Mhm.
I love that. I think that is so huge because we're teaching from such a young age that your body it doesn't belong to your parents. It doesn't
Mm-mm.
belong to your church. It doesn't belong to your teachers. It doesn't belong to your boyfriend or even your
Mm-mm.
husband. Your
Mhm.
body belongs to you.
Mhm.
And you can talk about it accurately and with some force because
Mhm.
it is yours,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
So if I had girls, I don't have girls, but I do have lots of little nieces in my life.
Mhm.
Um, they're going to be talking about all the things
Yeah.
because
And
it's
that's
really
good.
important. And I will, when the time is right, figure out how to talk to my son about all these things. That feels a little different, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to
Well,
cowgirl up.
thankfully, you and Gare can tackle that together.
We will, because he's wonderful and we will find a way.
Mhm.
But
I
purity
think that's
culture is nonsense and
it's
we should
nonsense.
throw it out altogether.
And that's the other thing I wanted to say really quick is I actually do think it's important for both parents to have conversations with whatever gendered kid
It's
you have.
extremely important. I agree.
Because I think that was one of the things that I've heard too is often moms would have these discussions with their daughter and it'd be around that it'd be more shame based than education based,
Yep.
right? And then the sons would say, "Oh yeah, Dad just said this is how things work, and don't do it until I'm an adult or I'm married. And that was it.
Yep.
And it's like, what? So
Oh, yeah.
we need to have conversations. We need to be educational. We need to know ourselves. Also, going back to something you said in a previous episode when we like randomly talked about parenting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like read your kids' stuff, help
Oh,
them
get in there.
understand, like if they're starting to explore some things that they don't know because all they're learning are things from TikTok or their friends, have a
Mm,
conversation with them. Talk to them about these things. That's important.
absolutely.
Don't just leave it to the health teacher at school because they're not going to do the job.
I also, and this is not going to make me any friends. I don't really care. The notion that super, super, super conservative evangelical parents are terrified that their kids are going to have sex education at school. Listen, I understand that there are people who are very concerned that their kids will be exposed to something at school that they haven't had a conversation yet about at home. That's fair. I understand that. I think parents should have a choice in how they
I
educate
agree
their
with that.
kids.
Yeah.
But you cannot act like evangelical Christianity has not had opinions about sex this entire time and has introduced it to children without any kind of consent for a very long time.
Well, that and going like my brain automatically went to like, okay, so if conversations are going to happen at school, have them before they happen at school.
Absolutely. And you are naive if you think these conversations are not already happening, that they're not being
Correct.
exposed on
Correct.
YouTube, TikTok, all the things.
Correct.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Snapchat is terrifying.
Well, and here's the thing, it's happening younger and younger.
Hmm.
Right. And so, yeah, parents do need, again, I'm not a parent, but I've heard this numerous times from students, from friends of mine
Oh,
who are
yeah.
our age. They're like, people in my life were like, I was exposed in like the sixth grade or the fifth grade. And
Mhm.
I'm like, that just means we need to start having these conversations earlier around what does this mean and how do I help? How do I actually educate you in a healthy, constructive way
Yes.
that is going to help you navigate as you move forward?
Yes. And it starts with bodily autonomy. My
Yeah.
body is my body.
Yep.
No one gives me in my body from dad to husband. That's insane. My body is my body. My whole life, my body is my body. I get to make choices about my body, whether I'm a boy or a girl,
Mhm.
whatever, I get to decide.
Yeah.
And we just have to teach our kids to learn how to make the decisions that feel right to
Yeah.
them.
Both boys and girls.
Boys and girls. Absolutely. Thanks for hearing me out, bud. I feel so
Of
much better.
course.
I feel unburdened. I can't promise
Good.
we won't come back to it. And I'm sure I missed a million things. So please write in if you have a different take, if you feel attacked. I am
Mhm.
so sorry. These are my experiences. These are things we've seen in therapy rooms for years and years. Some
Mhm.
people have a beautiful story, probably.
Yeah.
I doubt, though, if it's a beautiful story, it's because of purity culture. I bet it's because you and your partner are beautiful in how you love each other.
Yes, and have had conversations and all the things.
Absolutely. So y'all have a great week. And if you want to hear us melt down about something else, let us know what you are also melting down about.
Yes, please send us all the things.
Absolutely. See you soon.
Bye.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.